Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another Wolfram Language Design Review. Again with our friend Tabular, uh, very needy design target. Um, Today we are going to be looking at tabular visualization, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe we should start the transformation just to be wrapped at and then go on from there.
Okay. So, I mean, we talked about transform columns, construct columns at great length. I don't know what happened with row indices and column indices. Did we not
So,
talk about the supplied type syntax, or not supplied, a nearest like syntax for getting those things, or am I confused?
uh, we have a nearest type syntax for select and discard.
I'm sorry, remind me what row indices does again.
It is I mean, row indices is more general than select. So it translates, actually, maybe the easiest is to open up the source. So it translates, index-based things. We have span and other things, but you can also see the beginning here is
I think the more relevant one is column indices,
What?
which
We can't hear you,
translate.
Rob. Rob, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I had my microphone in the right. So the more relevant one is column indices, which in addition, it translates to part type indices, but it translates keys to indices, which is sometimes quite useful.
Well, okay, but which way round is this? Is this
no, but
getting up?
select can
I would
replace
expect, given the
parts of row
name.
indices.
What's that?
Select can replace one case of row indices. The new design for select can replace that.
But I don't understand. This is indices. The word indices is the last word in the function name. It means indices come out.
Yeah,
So
they do.
this is saying, given a column, do I have a sample tabular somewhere? What's a sample? Where do I have a sample of tabular? Where's an example tabular I
In
can play with?
Tabular, for instance, the reference page Tabular.
Do we not have samples and example data and things yet?
No.
Do we have don't we have them in example tabular or tabular example loader?
Yes, but not in example data.
Okay, but we're going to put them in example data, presumably.
Um,
We need to,
yeah.
just like we did for data set, just like we have. Look, I
Right,
mean, we have.
but Rob, don't we have the this tabular example or example tabular? I thought we had
Yeah, it's
something.
you can do needs of example tabular data, and then example tabular data of, say, Titanic would work.
Okay, but if I did this, I don't know why this is so slow, but
That doesn't look like a well-formed. It looks like
actually, it
a.
doesn't look. It's two levels down, right?
Yeah,
I think
it's
it looks, yeah, it looks tree-like, nested-like.
Right.
I
But
think
we
the
need.
data set Titanic would work if you want to construct a tabular from that, if I recall.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we're not quite there yet on the visual design, right? We're close, but we're not quite there, correct?
Correct.
So, for example, the cutoff of the framing isn't really right, etc.
Yeah, I don't know. That's another thing. But like, there's an obvious bug today, which is like the column types are overprinting the name of the.
Oh, that's what that thing is. Okay. And the missing is going to be a dash, right? In its
Yes.
usual formatting.
Yes.
Okay. So here, I say column indices of line 7,
Right.
comma, sex, for example.
Yeah.
Why is it called column indices when it will return? So if
Well,
I say,
typically there's more than one, right?
okay, should that work? Shouldn't it be a pattern specification?
No, well,
No, I mean, well,
I don't think
let's look at the
that's
design, right? Right. You can, I think they're right. There's probably a list, right? A list of columns, which maybe could also support alternatives, although it's probably not doing real pattern matching, right? It's probably
Why
just
shouldn't it do pattern matching? I mean, the number of columns that we're going to have is not going to be so large. It seems like pattern matching will be useful. And what about string matching?
yeah, I think some amount of string matching actually works. I didn't do pattern matching explicitly.
Okay.
right.
What the
So
heck is index
could you do
select?
a regular
Wait
expression
a minute.
then?
What's index select?
I think index select is something I'd love to get rid of. It was an idea I had like over a year ago, and it's basically a way of specifying parts with a select, which I just don't think is very useful, and I think we should get rid of it.
Go to just futurize it. I mean, let's not.
Yep.
Okay.
So what's the span spec?
It translates it to indices.
So like you could do class
No,
semicolon.
no,
No.
span only works with numbers.
Okay.
So these messages need
So
to be a
then
lot better,
how
Rob.
is that different than from
Yes.
just the numbers? Won't that be the identity operator? Or you're saying it translates it in, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but that is the identity operator for that. Okay, but what it does is it can if you put the type of output, it and in particular when somebody specifies a whole bunch of keys, something you may want to know, are those really columns in the tabular or not?
Well, so if I say in here,
yeah, right.
well, that's not very useful. I think there's a lot of work needs to be done on the error messages here. I wasn't getting a single message, and there were lots of things that were clearly.
No, yes, we know that a lot of work needs to be done on the messages. We're working through that, but it's going to take time.
Okay, but in the case where I asked for one thing that isn't a column, shouldn't that
Right. That
shouldn't
seems
that
like it should be
return
a list with two numbers
missing?
and one missing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Should.
So is there an additional argument then you're saying or something that makes the span case not stupid?
Yes, that form argument.
What do you mean by not stupid?
Well, it was the identity, right? When you did the two semicolon four or whatever it was, right?
Yeah,
It
well,
just
none of
had
these
that.
formats here have anything other than basically packaging of those numbers.
yeah, so if you give list, if you add a span and give list, you'll get the
Woobly doobly. Okay. Not the most exciting operation in the world.
no.
All right. All right. What are we looking at next? So we're looking. There's some tightening up needed in column indices, row indices.
Does the similar things for rows. If you open that page,
But we don't have keys for rows, so
Yeah, I don't understand
right.
the point.
that whole
of this.
part is irrelevant.
I really don't know why we're doing row indices, why we need this.
Are there application examples on the page or something to motivate this? Because I agree that as it stands, it doesn't seem
No,
like
when we designed it, we used to have row labels and row keys, but we only have the key columns anymore. So I think this one could
Let's just
go.
drop it for now.
We
Let's
just
leave
drop
it as featurized on the page. Let's just plan to
Mhm.
drop it.
And the column indices, it's used a lot in our Packlet code for doing tabular operations, but maybe users don't need that. It
Sorry, so
allows
which
us to
one again?
canonicalize things.
Which one?
Column indices.
Oh, I think we should support column indices. I don't see any reason not to.
Fine.
I don't think it's super confusing. I don't think it's super important, but I don't think it's super confusing either. Okay. We were looking at tabular. Okay, so this categorization stuff, we didn't get to that yet, right?
Right.
And the importance of that is it's this. I mean, I don't understand why we're not doing that by adding a column that is the category name.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what we should be doing?
Yeah. So either you replace or you add. And most often I think you want to add as an additional thing.
Right. So I don't understand this name because I mean this is basically a column. It's basically right. Construct columns. No. It's a transform columns.
You could say that if you create them all sort of by hand instead of getting a menu of ways of doing it, then yes.
Is this operation what I, as a physicist, would call binning?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For numbers, it's definitely binning.
It's binning.
And it's sort of binning, it's just it feels weird to have string bins, but I guess.
Right, but then the name of the bin, I mean, what this thing is doing is it's creating another column.
Yeah.
Whose entries are the names of bins.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Right.
And
well, go ahead, Roger.
No, I mean, so part of the discussion I wanted to show why, why it's really important to have these categories, because that's the basis for a lot of that one is the least, fleshed out of anything.
Okay, but I get it. I mean, you want to be able to do grouping by these things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Many things you want to visualize by them because they represent subsets, a partitioning of your data set.
Yeah.
You want to do, regression modeling based on those quotes factors or those categories. You want to do pivot tables. You want to do, well, a whole slew of things.
Okay, I understand. But so now I understand how this is characterizing that, because I mean, we have the notion of bin counts and so on. Bin, what is our main function? I mean, say bin counts.
Bin lists is the function you're thinking about.
Oh yeah.
And in this number categorize, it's actually, so I've set it up to work on a tabular column, which is what you suggested months and months ago. And then it's from it fits in transform columns, and it creates this new categorized, this column of categories. And it's actually, because I use the compiler to implement it, it's quite a bit faster than bin lists.
Okay, but that's don't tell me you're going to have a new function because you didn't.
No. But it does more than bin lists, because it's attaching a label to each of the lists.
So that's taking it in bins of size 2, right? Yes. Yeah, look, this one goes up to 1.79, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are bins of size 2.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me understand what your number categorized thing is supposed to be doing. What is it doing?
So it can do binning, it's the usual things that you described there, which is sort of arithmetically spaced, is what you kind of just described with your
so this
argument.
Design is the same as the histogram design?
Yes. There's also an important style down there, which is based on frequency.
Wait a minute, does histogram support this case?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, histogram supports a lot more than you think it does.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And down there is the quantile case where it's
Yeah. Equal probability spacing. Or you could give it yourself,
okay.
like the last cases.
So
if you wanted quartiles, for instance, you could just give that there.
right. So this is basically bin lists. Is that true? Other than the fact that it has column handling.
It's very much like bin lists.
Okay,
except
so
for
why aren't we extending bin lists to deal with these extra cases? I mean, certainly these things here we could absolutely put into bin lists.
Oh yeah, that direction is easy. But how do you? I mean,
how do you so what bin list is missing is a set of the categories for each case. So you deduce that it was between 0 and 2 and 2 and 4, but we want to have those categories explicit when we're categorizing something.
Okay, so let's give this as an example. Okay, so that's a case where we have category names effectively and category counts. But so what you're saying is what you want to take a column, and it's kind of like an image processing. You're giving a label.
yes.
Am I making sense?
Yeah, effectively.
Yep.
So what are our names for things which label things?
I mean, you might want to do it yourself. Like,
yeah, I understand that, but in a okay, let's imagine I have a picture. What the heck am I doing here? Oh, this is the prototype build. Hey, somebody should report this bug. It shouldn't be doing this. It should not need to do anything.
And there are issues with downloads in today's prototype build. So somebody put in a branch prematurely, and so this may be, well, it does seem to be progressing. So
what the heck is it doing? It's downloading 1 million species or something to get one octopus. It should be.
Who doesn't need 1 million species?
Well, I don't know. Our planet has like 10 million, one would guess right now. Unknown how many it had before. Unknown why that number is the number it is.
well, maybe there are 13 fields in the metadata.
Okay, there's an octopus. I don't know why I was making an octopus, but let me do. What's an example of something that does labeling? Morphological components of the octopus.
I think that does labeling. Oh, right. Okay, yes.
Okay, so this is the kind of thing we're looking for, right? That in the extra column, everything is given a label, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes those labels will be sequential integers. Sometimes they might be a symbolic representation of the bin. Am I making sense? Should the default be a symbolic representation of the bin? I think
I set it up to be a symbolic representation of the bin so you could actually look at them and see what they
that's what I would think too, which is interesting because things like morphological components don't have that possibility, even though they perfectly well could. I mean, morphological components perfectly well could have a little copy of the image in every one of these entries, a little copy of that part of the image. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
It doesn't right now. But so this thing, then what is its return? Oh, it doesn't say here. Can I do this? Can I actually run it?
No.
Okay. All right. So let's just understand then. I have to say that I'm not a fan of the way this is set up. I mean, I would have thought it was a transform columns of tabular, comma, um, uh, animal, no, weight, arrow. I see. And now it's a global operation on that column. Is that correct?
It's a global thing on the column. So that's, and we're coming
Right.
closer to
So right.
discuss.
So that's where we had that whole conversation about the extra arguments. Remember the two extra arguments?
Yes, to this function.
Yes.
But that's pretty wild. I mean, if that basically what this is ends up being, number categorize of #2. Well, no, what it really is number categorize of #1, comma #2, where #1 is this element and #2 is all the elements. Is that correct? I mean, that's terribly inefficient. It's going to redo the categorization every time, but that's the concept, isn't it?
That's one concept. I mean, I've been working through, I've been talking to Tom, and I'll be talking to Jose, and I've talked to Carlo about different ways of handling that very issue. And I'd like to put together something clean to bring that up. But I think that's a fundamental issue in tabular transform columns is how do we differentiate between things that work on a whole column and things that work element wise. But I don't think this is the time to sort of dive into that.
Okay, but I mean, roughly, one way to think about this function, or ones like it, is you're given the whole data set and you're giving a particular entry, and yeah, I'm a little confused.
Right. I mean, if we did it this way, right, then presumably we could just stick bin lists in there with, an extended third argument. I think the point with number categorize is, right, you just give it the tabular and the spec and it figures out, and maybe there's no value added in there, but on the other hand, maybe just expressing it succinctly as the value added.
Yes, I understand that. But I mean, another possibility is that, like nearest or something, that there's a one argument number categorize that basically makes a number categorization function to which you feed any number. I mean, just like I can say, nearest right? And now I feed a number and it gives me the nearest number, but I could equally well do nearest arrow index here, could I not? And then if I take this and I say something like that, I'm very confused. Why didn't that give me the nearest by index? You see what I'm asking?
Well, it's hard to check because
if you had range, that would make sense. But random integers,
who knows?
There are probably 3 random integers that are the same distance
All
from
right. I get it, guys.
Yeah.
But that doesn't help me either, does it?
No, it's not very interesting.
I mean, you could probably have given it a decimal or something.
Okay, fine. So that's giving me the index.
Yeah.
So what I'm suggesting is that the analogous thing with bins, right? There's an analog of nearest with bins. See what I'm saying?
Right. Although we already have a rule syntax for bin lists.
I understand. I'm not telling you the syntax. I'm just saying functionality wise, if we had a function that took, a column or took some, because you might want to standardize columns, taking the bins from the naturally occurring whatever might not be what you want. You might have 10 tabulars that you all want to, bin every time you have this thing, you bin it from in, blocks of 10 and 0 to 100 type thing, right?
Yep.
So it wouldn't be useless, I think, to have a categorizer function. That's not a good name, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
That then returns a category name. I kind of like this idea.
Yeah, so for the next meeting, I'll bring up how this number categorize actually works right now, and I'll look into this idea of the categorizer function, because I think I actually have something a bit like that already, but I just, it's been 6 months since I worked on it, so I just don't remember that.
Okay, fine.
So some things I know for these categorizers need to look globally on things, like quantile stuff needs to look at the whole thing.
Yeah, it has to look at the whole column.
No, but the whole point, Roger, the whole point here is once and for all, you run the categorizer function on the whole data. Okay?
Okay.
Or on some faux data that's always 0 to 100, let's say.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You get back a categorizer function, and then every individual piece of data now immediately gets told, well, what category is it in?
I mean, I guess they all could have a version that returns one of those functions.
I mean,
but the recipes for how to describe categories, I think is, like for strings and dates.
I know
and so
it's different, right?
Right.
But nearest, for example,
we basically already have that sort of, right? We have classifier function, right? It learns on some stuff, and then you feed it an arbitrary thing, and it.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. Although classifier function goes to a group. But I'd like to point out that nearest works on strings and numbers and images and all kinds of things. Right? So I think that this categorizer could work the same way. And the issue is, this is for things, well, I think how does this relate to clusters? Because we also have clustering functions of various kinds.
Yeah. So I think that those can also be used to sort of discover categories, if you like.
But like, as an example,
you might pick some number of columns, and feed it sort of the data set that represents all the way down, and you get clusters. And
but the point that I'm making is, what comes out from nearest, from classifier function, from clustering, and so on, all these things must be usable as group indices or group specifiers.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that the ones that we had here were sort of, they're kind of aimed at being author friendly. You can express a desire. These other ones
that
we
have here, the ones like
number categorized.
Right. Yeah. I think the point is that sort of, right, number categorize that, right, you can easily specify what categories you want, right? Clustering is you're asking some algorithm to go and decide some set of grouping for you. But essentially, they're the same operation, right? You're taking a bunch of points and you're splitting them into groups.
Yes.
Yes, but in some sense, I think people will want something simple for number, like.
Oh yeah. I'm right. I'm not. That wasn't an argument not to have this function. Yes. That was just explaining. Yes, these are both the same thing, but how you express your desires is differently. In various clustering things, either you let it do it, or you give it some sort of machine learning algorithm to decide how to group things. And with bin lists, you tell it, well, I want 1 through 5 and 7 through 23 as my groups, right? Or I suppose 1 through 3 and 4 through 9, since it's GCSE day in England today.
What?
It's GCSE day. The people got their test results. So 1 through 3 are not passing, and 4 through 9 are passing grades.
Wow, they've changed that in the last 40 years.
Yes, they have.
That's interesting. It's
right. The GCSEs are what used to be called the O. Well, I guess they're a combination of O levels and some other thing that was even lower.
A-levels.
No.
There was never anything below O levels.
Yes, there was, but never mind.
Okay, well, sometime in the last half century it got changed. Okay, all right. I think we were supposed to go on here. We had been looking at. Okay, I'm understanding better this categorization thing, and I think there's more thinking that has to go on here about how you to me. Okay, I'm going to give my immediate thing is that there's almost a categorize columns or something function that where because it can see perfectly well, oh, those are a bunch of numbers. See what I'm saying? For a given column.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, the type will tell you that, yeah.
Yeah, right. So then it's really a question of then what is the binning, right? Or even, bin columns.
I just think it's going to be an unwieldy function to describe if it's describing all
columns
these
are going to be
don't
been
think
differently because you might like in the Titanic thing, you have ages and you might want to bin those in a particular way, but you might have some other column numbers which you want to bin in quite a different way. So I think it's kind of a column by column type of thing, really.
Yes, I agree with that. But I'm saying, look, it's a question how people do this. For example, it could very well be the case that I'm going to think about this one column at a time. Okay, so that I say I've got a tabular, I bin columns on the age column for young, medium, old type thing, right? Then I get back another tabular which has that added. Then I say, oh, now I'm going to bin by sex or something, right? See what I'm saying? And I do it again, rather than putting them all in some big complicated specification in a single function. I mean, you could say the same thing. It's not like we don't get back tabulars that are then reusable.
Right.
No. So and maybe we should postpone this until we actually dig into the details of the function. But one thing that's not entirely obvious from the spec of if you're giving sort of multiple columns, is it binning independently in each column, or is it binning?
Yeah, well, maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it should just be doing, one shot. Just like, I mean, I could imagine a gazillion functions where we could be doing 3 different things at the same time, and sometimes that's necessary, but often it is not. See what I'm saying? I think this might be a case where, and I really like the term bin, rather than categorize. I think you can bin strings, you can bin numbers, you can bin dates. It's all good. And it fits in with our bin lists and bin counts functions. Make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, that really helps me to even understand what the heck those functions are, which I didn't understand before. Okay, should we go on to visualization, or do you want to?
No, that's fine. I think that we can. Yeah, I think it's appropriate. So for tabular visualization, that guide page is not complete. I mean, neither of them are complete actually. And I think for visualization, we want to kind of turn over to Brett and Normal to kind of just give an overview of where we're at. And
okay, I mean, so if I give this taboo, I need to look at what it has in it now, and I say histogram, how might this work? Well, that's dead in the water.
Yep.
Okay, comments, guys.
Yeah, so you want them to show you, or
they want to share, or are they going to tell me something? Can you speak, please?
Yeah, there's no documentation, or there's very little documentation ready. So, Brett,
Normal. Can you please say something, Brett? What should this have done? Brett, I think you're on mute. Can you take yourself off mute, please?
Well, it's not obvious to me that should have done anything.
Is Brett here?
Okay, he just in the chat. He just said that apparently his headset is not working.
Oh, I see. So with histogram, maybe you can give it a rule, taboo rule, and then H as a string. Yeah.
Right. Right. I was going to say the one argument for me
That's
wasn't clear
nice.
that it should do anything because I don't know how you histogram 5
Yeah,
columns.
I understand that. I understand. I got it. I got it.
Right. I mean, also, I mean, you presumably just do taboo part all comma age, which is kind of I mean, seems like the clearest way to do it.
Okay, so by the way, error messages needed for a case
Yep.
like this.
I was actually wondering though whether I actually encountered this the other day, whether histogram could support sort of nominal scale stuff and basically be the same as
I
like
think it would be nice.
bar chart
As
of
bar chart. Yeah,
counts,
right.
essentially. Yeah.
Well, I think ordinal scale. Well, okay, there's nominal scale and there's ordinal scale.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know whether this is an ordinal scale here.
Class. I mean, class
question.
could be an ordinal scale, but I mean, but they're also. I mean, we already do.
Yeah, I mean,
like
when you're
blind
using
plot.
the word first, you're by definition in ordinal
It is
land, right?
ordinal, but
I know that, but
if you,
it's a question for Roger and so on. In our ordinal scale technology, do we have something for the words first, second, third, and so on?
No.
We probably should.
Yeah. So at another meeting, I'll bring up a lot of things that we could do to curate things.
Oh, we should do it. We have a whole giant pipeline for doing curation.
I know. That's why I'm bringing it up. So in some sense,
we almost heard you, I think.
Almost.
Say it again.
Okay, now we can hear you, Brett. Or at least I
Yay!
can.
Okay.
All
I
right.
have no idea what was going on.
So, do you want to share? Is that the idea?
I can share. That's
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and request to share? Can you initiate? Can you start sharing, please?
Yep, I'm sharing.
I don't think you are. I don't see
It
it.
says I'm sharing.
You need to go up to the top and choose into the view options and switch from watching Stephen's screen to watching Brett's screen. Or Stephen can at this point stop sharing.
It's
I'm
something
not
I do.
seeing your screen at all. Is
there's
anybody
a
else
tab
seeing
at the
screen?
top of the Zoom. Yeah, I can see it. You just have to click it.
I can switch over to Brett when I'm
Okay,
watching.
fine. All right. Okay, great. No,
Okay.
it didn't work for me. Oh, yes, it did. Okay, there we go.
Okay, so you see
Okay.
the screen now.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So we have the
I've got
visualization
to start
side.
using that toolbar, by the way, that you're using that says xkernel and so on. Is that in wires?
No, it's very specific to my machine.
Is
there
there
a version
of it that
toolbar?
you put in Stash somewhere for people to
I mean,
grab?
it lives in Stash, and various people have,
Can we
taken the
not
code
put
and
it into
modified
wires?
it.
Can we put it in the internal function repository?
Maybe.
Be a nice thing to do.
I'll think about that. I mean, the other thing is that, like I said, everybody who has, done a version of it, has put their own little things up here that are useful to them.
That's nice, but we can have 5 of them in wires. It's fine.
Yeah.
But having, yeah, okay.
But
All
anyway,
right.
I'm glad you like my toolbar.
Well, I only like it in appearance. I don't really know what it does, but go ahead.
Right.
Okay. So now what's this? LV1. Okay. What does that mean?
So we have
level
1. Level 1 is basically what you saw with the histogram. So we have a basic support for tabular and then an arrow syntax.
Okay, can I see that with list plot with 2 different arrows? You understand what I'm saying?
2 different arrows.
No, that's what. Back up.
Okay.
Back up to the first example there.
Okay,
that's nice. Okay, so that's what I was asking for: the X thing and the Y thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right, and so this is X, this is Y.
I know, I can see that.
That's
Y, and X is just the sequential thing.
Yes.
This
is still just Y.
Yes. Okay.
Is there a difference between those 2 inputs?
No.
Like
okay.
It's just this is easy. This is
one has
more
a
general.
List. Okay, I missed it.
Yes, there is a difference in the inputs, but it's just that list.
Okay.
So if you had double lists, there, so I'm trying to understand if I want separately plotted the body mass, the length, and so on the same scale, I'm confused now.
Okay, so let's look at this example now, right? Okay, so this is body mass on X.
I
Bill
see.
depth is the blue on Y, and bill length is the yellow on Y.
Okay, so if I just had to, could you try this next cell, please? Just get rid of the body mass. Delete the body mass.
Yep.
No,
Select,
just delete
I
the
know.
body mass argument piece and leave the rest.
Yep.
Okay, now run it. Okay, so those are the two. Why are they not two different data set colors? That looks
Because
like a
this
bug
is
to me.
one data set. This is
No, it
bill
looks
depth
wrong.
on X.
No, it should be the X coordinate. No, that seems wrong, right?
No, it's right.
No. What if you want to plot
Because
multiple pairs?
right, you could have X1, Y1, and then
Yeah.
Okay,
Could
so
you
what happens? So then okay. So
can you do
now
something like none and then
or
that?
automatic, comma. No, what okay, what say automatic, comma, and then a different attribute like body mass underscore G. Second one, automatic, comma, body mass underscore G.
and that's gonna fail, I'm sure.
Okay, but do you think that should work?
What is automatic? Oh, the one
The numerical. The thing that because
the integer.
in the
Right.
current syntax of
Right, it's a mix
It's
an XY
automatic
thing and a Y
none.
thing.
Wait, so what? Actually, wait. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I would.
we gotta have something to make that work.
Right.
That seems like as harmless a way to do it as any, because we haven't needed
If
that
you
in the
delete
current
the
list
automatic,
plot
will it work?
syntax. What's that?
If you delete the automatic, will it work?
I don't think so. I mean, it did something, but I don't think it did what he wanted.
Right.
Yeah.
So wait, here's a question. I mean, why? So okay, first of all, if you want to do multiple data sets, can you wrap some of these rule things in a list? Like, could I have a list of 2 of these? Does that make sense?
No,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes, wait a minute.
No, I mean
Penguins-
that's
now,
getting
that
into
would be
like
a
these sorts of things, right? I mean, this is
No.
Right.
Christopher is saying
No.
Christopher's saying put the penguins in a list, okay? In other words,
No,
you've got
no penguins in a list. Just exactly that example there where you got the blue and the orange. Could you have written that by having a list where you say penguins arrow, bill depth, and bill length, comma, penguins arrow body
that's what I
mass?
meant by putting the penguins in a list.
Oh,
In other words,
well,
yeah, right. So yes, try
Yeah.
it. But no, you're not doing the right thing. You're not doing the
Yeah,
right
yeah,
thing. It's an outside list, a list around the whole thing, and you repeat example tabular data of penguins. Do you understand what we're saying? Put a
I
list
see.
at the beginning. Put a list
Just
at
a
the
second.
beginning of the list
Okay.
plot.
Yes. So you're talking
right.
this with
Now get rid of the first piece there, whatever you want to do. Right, try that.
I've still got an extra.
There's still some, yeah.
Okay, so we've got length and depth and
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that
The
should
second
work.
one is a little misformed, but yeah.
Right. I mean,
That should
still.
work.
But
Okay.
it does get a little complicated if we support the above syntax, right? Because if we support both of those, then that means that we have you could do 2 layers of data set lists, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it gets potentially yeah.
No, but so why not just do that? So in other words, we haven't had that issue before, probably. We've got a flatten and color. Does that make sense?
But wait, hold on. Sorry, I just don't understand. I mean, what can you express with the above syntax that you can't express with the below one? Like, why have that above one for doing
Well,
multiple
because it's
data
convenient.
sets?
I like that one. I think that's a good one.
Well,
why
I mean,
have to
so
repeat the penguins?
I mean, one of the reasons is that this right. I mean, so this is level 1, right? That table at the top had level 1, 2, and 3. And we're looking at level 1 and level 2 for the 14.2 timeline.
One of the things we expect to do
right. I mean,
forward
the things that we're going to be getting into in level 3 but which gets more complicated, especially for things that aren't just list plots, is you might, having something that is some sort of syntax like, plot style goes to island or something, something where you're then saying, go use this other column to
pick out
a color or the plot markers or whatever.
I understand.
So because categorical variables effectively pick out subsets, right?
Yeah.
Or groups. Okay. So that's often how you embed it in sort of one tabular, right?
I think the thing you've just defined there as an awkward is going to be a mess. And I would argue that, okay, I don't necessarily believe this yet, but something like, visualize tabular, and then it's a pure list plot where, and this may be crazy, where essentially the strings are like data. See what I'm saying? So that, because this idea that you say plot style arrow island without reiterating the tabular there, I think that's going to get very messy.
And when you say style, comma Times New Roman, the Times New Roman might be a column in your
right
tabular.
Right. I mean, so
right. I don't think
this
island
is where
would be the literal
we had
right-hand
originally side. Right. I mean, the actual syntax, we were prototyping, just to have it not interfere with anything else. And I am sure this doesn't work, in this prototype build, but something like,
right, and I.
Yeah, this is pretty.
And Itai hates encoding.
Yeah, not thrilled with using either. But.
No, these are both crazy. This is both crazy, but I get the point. That
and so then
I don't think it would be a bad thing.
Four different such dimensions that we can use.
Yeah, we've got size of blobs, we've got this, we've got that. Yeah,
right. I mean, ultimately, what you kind of want to emulate, like the most explicit way of doing this would be if you just map over the tabular and then say, list. Here's my X coordinate, here's my Y coordinate, here's a style around it, whatever. Is the point just that that's really inefficient? Or
right. No, I think this is part of the exploration phase of a tabular. Now let's see if this factor has an effect.
Sure. But I'm just saying, it seems like at least to me, it seems like the simplest way of doing this, the way it's like the clearest. So you see, there aren't like rules and lists and whatever, is just to map over it and make a bunch of styled or otherwise annotated.
Right. You create a new tabular that has an X column and a Y column. And
no, but Christopher is making a different point, I think. In the data, one of the things that we've done that's pretty nice is to have the possibility of symbolic wrappers in the data. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So, for example, one syntax I can imagine, on the right-hand side there, what we've got is just like you can say, if you say list plot, just type in list plot.
Okay.
List plot of list 1, 2, 3, comma style 4, comma red. Okay, and evaluate.
And this one is red.
Right. So my point would be, maybe what could be done is on the right-hand side where you have bill depth and things, that could say something like style of bill depth, comma, island or whatever it is.
No, well, I mean,
no, I think
that's not what I was proposing.
Literally map,
I know what Christopher
style of pound column A, color, color data of 104, comma, pound column B, and explicitly construct the things that you're going to plot. And I think maybe that just doesn't scale very well, right? This way you have a lot of automatic behavior. So you only specify the minimal thing that you need, and then it can figure out everything else it needs to adjust.
Well, but that's sort of the question. I mean, there's a few. Well, first of all, there's two different senses of scale, because I know that sometimes when you do stuff like that, it also just is really inefficient. But I don't know if that is fun, like it renders slowly and stuff. But I don't know if that's a fundamental thing or what. But honestly, like, I mean, in the examples that we have right here, I think that like mapping over tabular is going to be no longer than what we've written so far.
I know, but it requires a higher level of understanding. But I would
No,
still like
I think it requires less understanding often because it's just like you're just explicitly constructing. You know how to make a list of pairs, and list plot takes a list of pairs. There's no magic new syntax. I mean, I'm not really trying to complain too much about the magic new syntax, but I just want to understand like what is the
Right.
value in having a super flexible syntax that can do everything if it's really unclear and you can just map over your list and use style and
Right,
other
but
wrappers.
I just want to understand the thing that I'm proposing. Could you write it out the right-hand side and that second thing and that second one there? Instead, get rid of the color encoding. Get rid of
Okay.
the second one, not that
Okay,
one.
gotcha. Okay.
Okay, get rid of the color encoding and instead wrap around bill length of millimeters, wrap style, comma, island, or something. That isn't quite right. That's not quite going to write, but right. Or maybe
Right.
something like color category or something or color. I'm not sure what the right thing is.
So if instead of island you had
There.
red there, would that work?
Right. I mean, so
Like I'm asking
okay,
it right now. Like if you
this
put
is
red
one
there.
thing, right? I mean, this
I'll try it.
is. I mean, no, it's not going to work.
Okay. Well, I just didn't hear you and actually say that it wouldn't work until that last sentence.
Well, yes.
um,
Okay,
but
let's zoom out for a second.
Yep.
Okay. What we've got, list plot as it is right now takes things with XY coordinates and renders them. And as sort of an afterthought, it puts other kind of styling on them. Right?
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
So an alternative is something, and this is possibly a more general sort of transducer option function that takes, just like we have in graph, for example, vertex shape function, which can basically which can do anything you want in terms of how the vertex is rendered.
Right.
Right. So similarly here, what one might be saying is you're feeding in some number of parameters, bill length and body mass and island and all kinds of other things. You're feeding in a bunch of parameters, and the fundamental thing you want out is a representation that we don't have particularly cleanly right now of sort of the parameters for how to render the thing that you want to render.
So
you don't have particularly
point
cleanly,
value plot does that.
What's that?
Point value plot does that effectively.
Right.
I
mean,
never use this. I never use this. I probably should, but I never use it. I forgot it existed. What version?
And is this one of the things that's called plot, but should really be a chart?
No. So this was older than I thought.
Have you ever used it? I've never used it. Hey, Christopher, have you ever used this thing?
I think I've used it like once.
I didn't remember it existed.
I mean,
I think my only issue with it is it doesn't scale super well when you have a huge number of points. And like the one time
that sounds probably about right.
Yeah.
that
well, that should probably be fixed, but I mean
yes. Right, but basically, if I understand, Stephen, you're proposing perhaps like a rendering function for list
yes,
plots.
that's what I'm proposing.
And I mean, we have, I mean, as you say, there's other things that do have that, all the graph stuff,
Well,
the
charts.
charts, were probably, one of the first things that went down that path. And, the issue I see with it for something like list plot is it seems like it would be a very inefficient approach.
Okay,
Which
that's a question of you figuring out how to compile it. I'm not going to take that as a no. I'm not. You can solve that. I'll help you with the engineering if you really need it, but I don't think that's an issue. Right?
One thing that we've found with this is that it's a very general solution. So maybe we should do that too. But I think that there should be a slope. I mean,
yes, I completely agree, and I also agree that having a general function there that isn't compiled doesn't make a lot of sense, right? We obviously need special cases.
Yeah, but the other thing is that so we can do we can do an awful lot of things with style, not everything, but we can do a lot of things with. Okay, but the thing is that you are responsible for constructing everything. So
I know we don't want that.
No. And so if it's going to be sort of some reasonable ease of use, it kind of need to fit, common workflows need to be easy, basically.
Yeah, bite-sized pieces.
Yeah.
Well, right. But I mean, so for example, the fact that, okay, you want to also tag which island the thing was on. Okay, we shouldn't need to have to say, oh, I want these particular colors and I want a legend for these to show what they are.
Well, no, I mean, absolutely not.
I mean, if you want, I mean, so the other thing is when we start to use graphics more, and what our scientific viz functions do, they don't really use, okay, how should I express this? They use geometry as their fundamental visualization primitive mostly. There's a few exceptions, but most of what they do is to show surfaces and curves and points and things like that.
Well, because they've got color functions and so on. They've got mesh functions.
They do, but they are sort of secondary. Okay, except for things like density plot or contour plot and Jesus, I lost my train of thought here. But it's so in plot style, if we go back to sort of list plot, right? You can, let's say that you wanted to have two directions like size and color. Then you need to generate the tuples of how it's going to split on the different, data sets.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I'm saying? Because we have a one all-you-can-eat only kind of style. So you can do everything, but you will have to enumerate the cases, even though they kind of go in two different directions.
Yep.
And if you can have visual markup, like say color and size, that go in two different directions, then they're independent of each other, and you can decode them both. And we can automatically generate a good legend that explains what the heck's going on or how to decode it. If we have a programming only type solutions, we could never generate a legend. You would have to manually do it every time.
I get it. Right. So yes, I agree that we need, but go back to your thing, Brett, your summary. Okay, so one of the issues is we're not going to have, let's say we have some visualized thing. These plots all have different kinds of characteristics. We definitely do not want to have a new family. We've got plots, we've got charts, we've got visualizations. We don't want to do that. We somehow have to shoehorn the syntax or something into these existing functions. Do we all agree?
That is what we're doing.
Okay. So, there really, to me, are two issues. One is the convenient extraction of columnar data from a tabular. That's thing number one.
Without losing key information like type.
Yeah, well, fine.
And label.
No, wait a second. Yes, okay, fair enough. Where's the label? Where we don't have labeling yet.
Column names.
Oh, column names. Okay, fine. Yes. Okay, so first thing is the convenient extraction of columnar data. The second thing is, because we now, with tabulars, typically have much higher dimensional data because the tabulars have many columns in them, we
Yes.
are interested in visualizing more degrees of freedom in the plots.
Yes.
Fair characterization?
Exactly.
Yes. And anticipating where you maybe is going is that we can in fact extend the list syntax to take not only pairs for list plot, but it could take higher length.
Exactly. That was where I was going. Right.
Okay. So we've already planned that out, that we will then extend them, and we will be able to, these other visual dimensions, these visual variables can pick off other dimensions in that.
Right. So, okay. So then the obvious thing to do is there's a default action, just like we have default colors for different data sets and so on in a list plot. If you have 4 different, variables that you're defining. So in other words, and it should be the case, even if I have just regular numbers, if I just put the data in as in literal form, instead of pairs in list plot, I have quintuples in list plot.
Right.
That those extra 3 variables will be rendered somehow. And there should be some function, some option that is the disentangling function that tells you, beyond plot style, because plot style doesn't give you any freedom. In a sense, even a plot style function would give you a better piece of control. Just like we have color function, which applies itself to the values. And then we have to have color function scaling to deal with kind of patching that up. What you're basically saying is, given the values, sort of how do we actually render them? Which is similar to the scaling function, which I think is working very nicely. I mean, I use that all the time. Okay, so let's just zoom out for a second, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We've had things like list log plot. Yep. I like list log plot; it's useful, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when I want to do scaling on some random kind of plot, I use scaling function. And it works nicely, right? Mm-hmm. And so what we're saying here is, if you've got the 4th dimension of the list plot quotes coordinates, and then you want to say something about how you render that 4th coordinate, that's kind of like the scaling function story. In fact, you might even use scaling function to, you might have a 4th in the scaling functions. Is the X scaling function, the Y scaling function, and then what can
actually
we call
so that's kind of what we're put in to those new sort of visual encoding options, that you could give the scaling that you want right there.
I understand, but I think you should have the possibility of a scaling function.
Because the typical tabular case, I think there will be many more columns than the ones you want to plot. I mean, you're going to pick out, I don't know, 3 to 5 columns or something like that. And maybe it has, I don't know, 50. Yeah, something.
So what?
And so you want to point, so you don't want to give 20 scaling functions.
Absolutely not.
Right.
Okay, let me paint another picture here. In the metadata of the tabular, it might be that you would like to leave lying around, oh, by the way, if you plot this, scale them this way. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting idea.
I think it's a useful idea because, for example, I can imagine something where, if you plot, I don't know, the male and female thing, you might want them, I never remember which way around it is, pink and blue, whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are things where a default rendering is just like we have a label potentially coming as metadata. Default rendering seems like an obvious other kind of metadata.
It's possible. I mean, I think the thing with these compound objects like tabular allows
kind of a little bit already. I mean, it's just it's a step further than just using the type information.
Sure.
Right. So like, if it's a date column or it's a categorical column, we have scaling functions that deal with those sorts of things already.
Right. But I mean, I'm just coming back to all these functions we're dealing with. Okay. a fundamental principle could be sort of, and this is somewhat orthogonal to Tabular, but it immediately fits into Tabular. Okay, there are two concepts here. Concept number one, we're going sort of multidimensional for, it isn't really dimension. We really shouldn't call it that. We're going
I mean, there's sort of
multi-factor.
visual, the kind of visual dimensions.
I know, but it's kind of multi-factor or something, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
Anyway, we are, and a first question is, with the syntax of all these functions, I know there are a few hackerated functions, which allow, for example, listplot3d, I think, allows two different syntaxes. One is lists of triples, and the other is an array. Right?
I mean, most of them accept that.
Actually, all of them
in the
do
list
that.
family.
All of them do that, Stephen. There's a sort of what we call regular and irregular data. So when we get this sort of array,
Fine.
it's assumed to be.
Yeah, okay, fine. Okay, and that's probably sufficiently disambiguated.
Well,
I mean that was going to be one of the things that I was going to clarify with you is, if I do list plot of A, B, C, D, E, F. At the moment, that is, one set of Y values and another set of Y values. But it sounded like you were suggesting that this would be, one data set potentially with X, Y, and, a color parameter or something.
Yeah, that's tricky, isn't it?
Yes.
I agree, that's tricky. So, I mean, maybe that has to be switched. I mean, because most of the time it's going to be dead obvious. Right, but in these small cases, it's not going to be so obvious.
I mean,
I suspect we can't.
I mean, I don't know that it's going to be obvious much of the time.
Oh, yes, it is. We're not going to have. Look, most of the time you've got 100 data points, right? You certainly don't have 100 coordinates. You're going to be trailing off by the time you've got 4 or 5 coordinates.
But Tabular is going to have, right, 100.
Sure, they can, but that's not what you're seeing here. In the case of the Tabular, you're going to see arrow and then 3 or 4 different things. I mean, in the case of the Tabular, the disambiguation, you don't need the disambiguation because the Tabular is disambiguated by having rows. Okay?
I mean,
there is
Tabular is disambiguated by being tabular.
Yes, right. But this case, right, there is an ambiguity here, and we can't change the default. And so in the rare case where you're getting you're representing things with it requires thought. Okay.
Yes.
My guess is that this will be some option-based thing that will deal with this corner case. I mean, it's ugly to have the corner case because you'll have an array of pictures and one of them will go crazy. That's bad, but let's figure that out.
Okay, let's do this list line plot because it's easier.
What the heck was that? Yeah, okay, I get the idea. Right, those are ambiguous. Right. But that has not bitten us very often.
Well, in the first couple of years after we launched 6, we had a lot of tech support and other, issues.
Okay. All right, we need to wrap up soon here. But just so I understand, it seems to me we have those 2 studies, right? Those 2 different things. One is multidimensionalating. So if you go back to your...
So our plan is not to do that now, but it's for 14.3.
So can I ask you, right, there's
fine, then don't try and hack in these other things. Have some quite ponderous syntax for them. Don't try and hack it in. And wait until we can really do that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of things we need to sort out and iterate on.
Well, I mean, don't try and hack what in. I mean, so to be, for clarification,
just be happy with, do what Christopher was saying. If you really want the island tagging and this and that and the other, just write it in the code. don't try and hack it into some clean, nice syntax like this.
It's
before
not.
we've got
No, I mean,
no.
but,
So
but
what we're doing now to explain what this level means, we're not supporting anything more than the functions support classically.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
right.
So
You know, it's just an
so
extension
that's
to
future
this type of
expansion.
we
syntax.
backed out of that because there's several things we need to iterate on and better understand, and it takes time. And if we spent all our time on that, we might have shipped nothing.
Okay.
I mean,
The only
we
way
would
to
have
ship a perfect product is to not ship a product.
right. But we usually do converge. It's just that sometimes,
Yeah, okay, all right, fine. But I think it's perfectly reasonable I think it's useful to have looked ahead and to realize that the path ahead is to this multidimensional data and then a decoding mechanism for the multidimensional data. I like that very much.
Right. So we want to present things around that in that,
right, but that's post 14.2.
That's post 14.2.
Yeah,
we
okay.
concluded
we
have
14.2, what we're doing is just this accessor mechanism.
Yes,
for Tabular.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. We're not trying to do anything else.
Right.
Okay?
Can I look at your chart for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
That's where we're at.
So the ones that have warning signs, like complex,
are not for 14.2.
We decided. I mean, we have a huge list of functions, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just want to understand the ones that are there.
I mean, so the ones that have warning signs right now are the geoplots and the vector plots.
And complex plots.
Hold on. Let me just understand them. Complex list plots.
We think it's unlikely that you're going to have complex numbers in a tab.
Yeah, I think
at least initially. We'll fix it. But if we have to prioritize.
No, okay. I understand. Geo list plot. Let me just think about that for a second.
So we hope to get a geo column type. We don't have
lat long column type, but geo positions. Basically.
A geo position column type. Yes. When we have that, we want to for sure enable all the geo functions. And if we have time to do it now, we'll try to do it now too, but it's going to be a little bit.
That doesn't seem so controversial.
Right.
Number line plot.
Well, we'll probably
right. I mean, number line plot.
This just it has its own. This is very parser dependent, and if something was written not by us, it doesn't follow the standard, and we have to do special work. That's all. It'll coming.
Right. I mean, the ones that don't have any icon, we still intend for 14.2. We just haven't gotten to that function yet.
Okay. Can I look down in the
Yeah, sure.
The vector ones. Yeah, I mean, that involves a level of structure in the data that is probably not super common for Tabular.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, the other thing that comes up with the vector and that we ran into when we were doing the geovector plots a few versions ago is, sometimes vectors are represented Cartesian, sometimes they're represented, in polar.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah.
Okay. Right. And so just to be clear, we are going to have the new rule syntax for 14.2.
14.2.
No, 14.1's out.
Yeah, 14.2
sorry,
is the one you wrote the blog about, Stephen.
I'm losing track
and presented. And
we all are. That's okay.
And is there a way to have, plot a data set on the x-axis and have y be automatic, or do I need to transpose my data set if I want that?
There is no way to have the y values be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc.
Yeah, there has never been.
There's never been.
You just have to write code, and I've done it, a bunch of times in my life, and it's okay. All right, I should go to my other meeting, but this seems to be progressing. I mean, we got more to discuss. I really like this idea of the multidimensionalizing these plotting functions.
So do I, and we hope to come back with something really interesting.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right, it's amazing. One would think we'd be finished by now, in general.
That's not how the world works.
Still getting longer, right?
Just getting up to, and you just level up to the next level, and there's a whole other.
All right. Look forward to all
Okay.
of this stuff. Okay. See you
See
guys
ya.
soon.